Hi, I'm Tim Pennington, and this is Seen and Solved by Hubbard-Hall. On this episode, we're going to take a walk down memory lane and remember 2023 as we revisit some of our favorite moments from the Seen and Solved podcast.
You're listening to the Seen and Solved podcast brought to you by Hubbard-Hall. Better results, less chemistry.
Let's get right into it with our guest, Jason Potts, who helped shed some light on extending bath life with electroless nickel.
A typical E10 bath, if you're doing standard mid-FOS, you're going to go 8 metal turns. You can predict your 8 metal turns based on the square footage you're running. You're going to know that throughout that time, it's going to slow down. So what makes it slow down? There's 4 parameters that's going to keep the bath at the speed that you want to keep it at. You have temperature, pH, your nickel, and your hypo concentration. Mm-hmm. You can keep those all within 90 to 100%. But as the bath ages, you're going to have the contamination. That contamination, it slows the deposit down. And there's also, on top of that, you can have contaminants like nitrates, zinc, which we may talk about, chrome, which is detrimental to the bath, and other metals. And stabilizers, some metal stabilizers can slow it down.
Fernando Carmen-Holy dropped by to talk about how cleaning can be cheap, but poor cleaning can be very expensive. So how can you tell that this hasn't been cleaned properly? What are the signs?
Let's put it this way. If you don't clean well, what's gonna happen? First of all, that is the most critical. If you have a heat treat, you change the structure of the material, and you need like uniform structure all over the part. So one challenge is if you left, for example, oil behind and it goes to the heat treat, and then that spot could be a soft spot. It could be one hardness different than the most of the part, and that can cause fail on the part, for example.
Robin Deal, Stuart Holloway, and Greg Wood cover the importance of wastewater treatment with a Hubbard-Hall client success story.
The first virtual call I had with Robin, I already knew I was going to like working with Hubbard-Hall, and I knew Robin and Stuart, after I met them, they could help us. I don't know how I knew all that. You just sometimes sense when you meet with people that, okay, these people understand us, I understand them, they're going to be able to help us find a solution. And I just kind of knew that, but midway through, we started to see the progress, and it just gave me tremendous hope. So I'd say by even earlier this year, I was seeing progress going, okay, we're going to make it. No more doom and gloom, thought process here. It's like, hey, we're starting to see some changes here that are going to work.
We talked to Connor Calais about how looking at a process holistically helps find the small change that could have a very big impact. You get called in when people are moving and building out, don't you, a lot? I mean,
if there's a change, they want to make sure that they're doing things right. And we appreciate that. It's good for us to be able to kind of see how a process has previously been used and how it's going to be used in the future. And us having eyes on an actual application and the equipment that they're using, the way that they're running different chemistries and how they're processing different parts kind of gives us a background. So that way, if an issue does arise, we're familiar with at least the context of how things are being ran. So we do appreciate getting to see or work with them and kind of give guidance if they're going to make any changes.
We spoke with Fernando Carmen-Holy once again, this time a deep dive into the magic of AquaEase Infinity.
When you're talking about a membrane and you have the liquid that you're going to filter, that is mainly 4 different ways that we can call different process. Mm-hmm. The most common, also use it on the plating industry, is the reverse osmosis. So right. It's very common to separate ions, aqueous, salt, certain kind of detergents. And those kind of operation that I will describe, that's all related with what is the size of the membrane. So the nanofiltration, that's another word, nanofiltration, you can use, for example, to take dyes from some process or take antibiotics or filter out sugar from a processed food.
We caught up with Jerry Dwyer to analyze the heat treat market and what trends he sees ahead for manufacturers. When people ask you, why should I heat treat my metals? Why should I heat treat my parts? Kind of give us a background. What's the answer you give them, and why are people doing that?
Well, when steel comes into a factory, it's malleable. You can form it, you can stamp it, you can punch it, You can do all sorts of things to shape it into the item that you're desiring. And the heat treating process actually gives it the physical characteristics that make that tool, if you will, practical. It'll give it a certain hardness so that it's functional.
Closing out our first season, Mike Valenti helped navigate the transition from solvent to aqueous cleaning in a special 2-episode appearance.
In solvent degreasing, your bath maintenance is minimal, right? You're doing maybe 2 things. You're looking at probably the acidity of the solvent. So solvents can go acid depending on the types of lubricants and the type of solids. So there's a acid acceptance test that typically gets done. And then really the only thing you're doing in a solvent system is we tell people to watch the boiling point of the solvent. If you start seeing it rise, then that means there's a lot of soil built up and it's changing the boiling point of the solvent. And those things happen slowly over time, and they don't have major impacts immediately. We're talking months to years sometimes before people start seeing those things.
We kicked off season 2 with President and CEO of Hubbard-Hall, Molly Kellogg, and her intriguing philosophy of giving manufacturers better results with less chemistry.
I've really been thinking about what it means to be an evergreen business, to be sustainable, and looking around at our current world, thinking about the next generation to hopefully take over for me. I feel like we've got a real responsibility to leave the planet, our communities, our manufacturing world in a better shape than we found them. And, the other funny reality about the products that we sell, so we're selling specialty chemicals into surface finishing and manufacturing. Nobody really wants to use what we sell, but they have to, because you can't use metal in a durable goods environment without it going through pretty rigorous chemical process. It's got to be cleaned. You've got to worry about rust. You've got to have a decorative or functional finish, all these things. Nobody wants to use them. So thinking about what our purpose is for our business, I'd really like to help our customers get those better results, use less chemistry, maybe it's less complexity, all in all, just shrinking the process so that they're able to do more with less.
Next, Jamison Grout talked us through what to keep an eye on to improve consistency while reducing processing time.
You hear it a lot, and it is true. I mean, you kind of design your pre-treatment to be as robust as possible, but the fact of the matter is things are changing upstream that are out of your hands. Sometimes things that you never even get the truth on, right? Because if it is causing problems, a lot of people don't want to admit that downstream. So it's a hard challenge. As a job shop especially, you have no control over incoming quality, and you're kind of expected to adjust and pivot to account for that. And also, we talk about, there's no universal good cleaner. There's so many different cutting fluids and shop soils or whatever that could be on parts coming in. It's impossible to have just a one-stop shop for everything.
Tom Salvino explored the intricacies of manufacturing and the significance of choosing the right supplier.
Cleaning is a really strong suit at Hubbard-Hall, where at other larger companies, it's a secondary thought. Your larger companies are looking at how do I sell the brightener because I can make money on brightener. Cleaners are just a necessary evil. Hubbard-Hall doesn't look at it that way at all. Hubbard-Hall realizes to have a good part at the end, we need cleaning is monumental in the process. And the research that we do in cleaning, like I said, I've worked at other places. I've never seen the work go into a line as what we do at Hubbard-Hall. And to be able to call up Mike Valenti as the head of our cleaning group, to be able to call up Mike and say, hey, Mike, I have this situation. What do you think? And to get his response or somebody from his team's response is just, it's invaluable.
Experts Robin Deal and Jeremy Morgan taught us how harnessing the power of nature is revolutionizing wastewater management. Explain to me really what biological wastewater treatment is.
Primarily, it's what we refer to as a biomass. So that's a large concentration of bacteria, and it basically mimics what we already have in Mother Nature. So any stream, river, creek, what have you, there are bacteria that naturally exist there. But in a treatment plant, we kind of take what Mother Nature offers and ramp it up to the nth degree. So a much, much, much larger concentration of bacteria. And there's really nothing that bacteria can't remove. In fact, a lot of systems, we actually have to back add some of those metals in the form of what we refer to as micronutrients. We kind of think of it as vitamins for bacteria.
Then Mark Miller discussed the environmental and cost benefits of operating a closed-loop zero-discharge pretreatment system. Today, we're going to talk about closed-loop systems. First of all, give us a background. What is closed-loop according to your definition? I know some people have different definitions of it. What is it, and what's the advantages of that?
So a closed-loop system essentially is a chemical process that generates zero waste to drain. Let's say you've got a 5-stage system, and really it's managing the rinse water that comes off of those systems. And in some applications we have found, we've done, worked with many customers to create closed loop systems, and we can manage that waste stream differently instead of having it go to drain, which eliminates a lot of headache for the customer.
The first episode in our Hero Products series with Connor Calais featured the versatility of Hubbard-Hall's AquaEase PL72A32. When it gets to the plating side or the finishing side or the anodizing side, those finishers have a tough time sometimes of really getting those lubricants and cutting fluids and things like that off. So it's really, I guess, imperative from a OEM standpoint or from a manufacturer or even the finisher to really get those contaminants off these parts as best they can.
Absolutely. Yep. And another benefit too is kind of adding to its versatility. It can be used at a wide range for temperature and concentration. You could be using it at 120, 130 degrees, spraying it at 1 to 2%. Or if you have a really aggressive application, you could ramp up the concentration to 20 or 30% in an ultrasonic tank and crank up the temperature if you need to as well. So you really kind of have that versatility to use this product in a way that best suits your application and your needs.
Customer Service Manager Jody Menzie checked in to share her vision of creating an omni-channel experience for customers.
We want to be able to help the customer, like you said, painless, effortless. When we eliminate these transactional processes, that frees up our time to learn so that we can actually also provide that expertise in some form or fashion, whether it's through, communicating, using digital tools to enhance how we can respond to customers and having those answers at our fingertips so that we can respond to them right away, or just, understanding, our products a little bit better and being able to provide, the VOC information that a customer might need. An experience, the customer doesn't want to be tossed to, 3 or 4 different people. They want that person that they called to be able to answer their question so that they don't have to be, go on to someone else.
We end this look back at 2023 by helping manufacturers stay up to date and compliant in the ever-changing world of solvents. And in this episode, Jeff Davis gives listeners advice on how to navigate the inevitable EPA and TSCA chemical designation changes.
The Toxic Substance Control Act had identified, 2016 had identified 10 potentially hazardous chemicals. The ones of most note are the whole classification of chlorinated solvents being trichloroethylene, perchloroethylene, or PCE, and methylene chloride, or MEC. Those, along with N-propyl bromide, or 1-bromopropane, which is a brominated solvent in the same family as the chlorinateds, are all under EPA's evaluation of what they call unreasonable risk to human health. That's typically been the purview of OSHA. And now we see that OSHA was always regulating worker safety over an 8-hour time-weighted average. And now we have EPA coming in saying these solvents are unreasonable risk to human health. So they have proposed what they're calling ECHLs. ECHLs is the existing chemical exposure limits over 8 hours. And they're significantly reduced from where they had been from OSHA.
Thanks again for listening to Seen and Solved by Hubbard-Hall. I'm your host, Tim Pennington, wishing you happy holidays and a happy new year. And we can't wait to see what 2024 brings.
The Seen and Solved podcast is brought to you by Hubbard-Hall. For more podcasts, visit hubbardhall.com or wherever you get your podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe, rate and review, and join us on social media. Produced by Allcast.